Truman is both the name of this guy,
good morning,
and a tongue-in-cheek pun that captures the essence of the whole of Peter Weir's comedy drama, The Truman Show. In many ways, Truman is a true man, just like any other person living a normal life. But the key difference is that he's the star of his own television show, without even knowing it. The Truman Show uses this concept to break down issues of identity and what defines the true self by shining a light on the automatic functions of power that exist in surveillance society. To understand this, we first need to take a look back at surveillance theory and its relation to power. In the 18th century, social theorist and philosopher Jeremy Bentham designed the Panopticon. The Panopticon is a type of institutional building where inmates can be observed by a single watchman from a central observing post, without being able to tell whether or not they are being watched. Although it is physically impossible for the single watchman to observe all cells at once, the fact that the inmates cannot know when they are being watched means that all inmates must act as though they are watched at all times, effectively controlling their own behaviour constantly. In the late 20th century, French philosopher Michel Foucault used the design of the Panopticon to illustrate his discussions of power and control in modern disciplinary societies. He developed the concept of Panopticism to refer to a kind of internal surveillance that becomes adopted through the threat of observation, causing people to monitor and guard their own behaviour. For Foucault, Panopticism is a strategy of power used for psychological manipulation, controlling and modifying the behaviour of its subjects through invisible channels. Returning to The Truman Show, we can see how this concept plays out. Christof, the godlike show creator, uses the surveilled space of the dome to manipulate Truman's life to his benefit. Christof is the governing body, the institution of power, and Truman is the panoptic subject, imprisoned unknowingly by the invisible eyes of the viewers that keep him there. As Foucault states, he is seen, but he does not see. Of course, the key difference here is that Truman does not know that he is being surveilled, which is central to the concept of panopticism. However, The Truman Show actually takes the concept one step further, by making all of the people in his world part of the surveillance system. His family, friends and neighbours are the people who watch Truman, and it is for their benefit that he behaves accordingly. Constant intervention from these actors has shaped Truman into a particular type of person that society deems normal, in fact, an idealised person. It is the watchful eyes of the actors in Truman's world that shape his behaviour, and, as they know everything about him, they can come up with various plots and schemes that cause him to alter his behaviour himself, without revealing that they are actually meddling in his life. When every aspect of Truman's life is planned and scheduled right on time like a laboratory experiment, the key question that rises to the forefront is that of free will. How much of Truman's personality is real, and how much is the product of decisions made by the invisible scriptwriters, directors, and TV crew members? How much agency does he actually have in a life that is, effectively, not real? Even his deepest worries and fears have been fabricated to keep him submissive and docile. The overwhelming fear of water has gripped Truman ever since he was a child, when his pseudo-father drowned, ensuring his motive for escape is effectively quelled. However, things don't always go to plan for Christof. Despite his omnipotent control, he cannot predict all of Truman's actions. During his college years, Truman was intended to fall in love with and marry co-student Meryl, but fell for Sylvia instead, a TV extra, perhaps suggesting that society's disciplinary controls cannot extend to matters of the heart. Ultimately, Weir does not present Truman as a docile subject, and as the movie progresses, his growing discomfort and anxiety at the strangeness of his world leads him to plot escape and search for a life that is more true. Conquering his fear of water, he sails to the edge of the dome and seeks to escape his man-made world. Truman seems to believe that despite the manipulation and control, he still had agency in his life. He still had free will.
I never had a camera in my head.
Even Christof seems to believe that, despite his deity-like interference, Truman was able to maintain authenticity.
Was nothing real?
You were real. That's what made you so good to watch.
Despite this, Foucault would argue that the invisible channels of control, observation, judgment, and examination mean that he is always subjected to disciplinary control. his basest feelings and behaviours determined by forces of which he was completely unaware. Ultimately, the Truman Show demonstrates how surveillance can be used to control a subject's behaviour, actions, and identity, forcing us to consider what really makes us human. If everything we perceive is manipulated by external forces, then where do we draw the line between the authentic self and the product of those manipulators? 20 years on, in the age of social media and mass surveillance, these questions have more significance than ever.